quite shallow. I have just a couple of results to show you how it really looks like on publicly available datasets. So these are 4 commonly used datasets. What we can see here, so what is even written here? So the y-axis is sorry, something that's called Gini importance. It's well, not so important here. What is it? It's just to give you the relative importance of features. So on the x-axis are samples features, so your points of interest. What we can see here, we can see that this data set is very leaking. Here we see a huge spike where something is happening. But here we see no huge spikes, so there are so many huge spikes. The same here. Random delay has that temporal component where you add random delays at various parts of your algorithm. Here, this is the masking countermeasure, so similar effect. And yeah, I will not bother you with a lot of details, but this is just cool to know. For instance, this is something that CPA would not be able to do. You know what is guessing entropy? Do you know what's guessing entropy? No. So guessing entropy is the average key rank. So key rank is the measure of saying, well, on what position did your algorithm tell is the correct key? So for instance, if your CPA tells key is 5, but key is not 5, but your second best guess, your second best hypothesis says key is 7, and 7 is correct key, then your key rank would say, well, my key is on the second position. So I would rank my key on the second position. And guessing entropy is just the average of that. You do many, many experiments to get some statistical significance and to get rid of certain effects. So what's important? Here, you check on the x-axis the number of traces. So this is the attack phase. Look, to break this, to obtain the key, so for our key to be correct key, on the first position, we need something like 5 traces. And they won't, this is not even state-of-the-art attack anymore. I think now we need something like 3 traces to break it. So this is the promise of machine learning, of profile attacks, of template attack. This is something you cannot do with CPA. You would not be able to take 3 measurements with CPA and break it. You would maybe need, I don't know, 100, 200, 1,000, depends. And you can see the same concept going even for some other targets. So even if it's protected, you can break it with 2 measurements, for instance. Profile attacks can break stuff much easier with much smaller number of measurements in the attack phase than what would be possible, of course, with direct attacks. And these are more results. And well, I will actually completely skip this part because it's going way too many details, and I think we should be finishing. This is read it. I will now explain. So Gil is asking, how come noise-added data is easier to break? Well, non-intuitive, but there is a good reason. Because actually, the difficulty of breaking that data set with noise-added, so you are talking about this noise-added. Yeah. This is going quite deep into theory of machine learning, but let me try to give you an intuitive answer. When you are trying to classify something, how does your perception on a big picture look? So you are trying to recognize a person, okay? You are going into a class and you are looking at another person. How do you recognize that person? Do you recognize that person by looking at the color of his eyes or at the big picture? So the full face. Of course, you look at the full face, big picture. And this is exactly what makes sense often to do. But of course, neural networks do not often know what is the big picture. They recognize part per part, and if a part is very noisy, that very noisy part can make the whole process very difficult. That's why you could add noise to the input data that will cover those fine details and just leave the big picture. So this is the regularization technique. So this is what we did last year for chess conference. We showed that you can actually counterintuitively, but you can add noise to the noisy measurements and make the attack easier. Tell the person to change shirt, add noise. Yes. Well, if you recognize person by shirts, yes, that would be adding noise. So you know in advance which noise is added, like the method. No, we do not care what kind of noise is added. You just add the simple Gaussian noise. Is it like data augmentation? Not necessarily, because data augmentation is a technique where you take a small number of measurements, and out of those measurements, you create more measurements. You augment the data, you add more. Here, we never added more measurements. We just added noise to the existing measurements. So it depends on what do you mean by data augmentation, but commonly by data augmentation, people think adding more measurements. If you mean augmenting with random noise, yes, then, but without producing new measurements, yes, then this would be augmenting. But commonly, this is considered as data regularization. So, but this is kind of going into even too specific details if you are not really hardcore into deep learning based side channel attacks. What was the main message here is, first of all, side channel attacks are powerful. Second, profiled side channel attacks are the most powerful of side channel attacks, provided that you work under assumption that you have the second device from where you can obtain the measurements. You need to have that threat model, but if you have that threat model, you are perfectly fine to work in this attack. And now, just to finish, whatever I said about these results, it was kind of a lie. So it wasn't correct. Why? Well, this is just for you to think. But commonly, when we are doing the evaluations, especially in academic setting, so going back, so many slides. Yes, going back to this picture. So I said I have one device, I have the other device. But commonly in academia, we have only one device, and then we artificially divide the data and say, well, this part of the data is my profiling data, where I know everything. This part of the data is my attack data, where I pretend I do not know the key. So academically speaking, perfectly valid. But in real world, there are always small differences between those two devices. Device you really want to attack and device you have under your control. And actually, even having such a small differences will make your attack very, very much different, very much more difficult to do. So just to show you, this would be the setting, very simple attack. This would be the setting where we actually faking two devices. So we have one device and then divide. This is what commonly people do. And this would be the setting where we would still use the same device, but we would just change the keys between those two between that device, because also commonly people use a single key for everything. And then this would be a setting where you would change the device, but somehow have the same key. And then this would be the setting when you really have different devices and different keys, what you have in reality. So this is just to tell you, to attack in reality is actually more difficult than many people in academia assume or work with, simply because they do artificial division of data from a single data set, from a single device. And by doing, I will just skip the other slides. This is just a possible way how to solve it, but I will not go into this. And just finally slide to tell you, So practically speaking, doesn't a guess entropy of 100 means that we have a very small space to brute force? No, guessing entropy of 100 would mean that on average, our correct guess is on 100 position. So if our guessing entropy would be 100 for a single subkey, that would mean we need to do 2 to the power of 100 or something to break it. So we want our guessing entropy to be 0, because 0 means not bit, byte. So you attack AES by divide and conquer approach, attacking byte per byte. That's why your Hemingway classes go between 0 and 8, because a single S box has all possible numbers between 0 and 255, and number 255 is 1111111, whatever, 8 ones. That is the Hemingway 8. Your S box works with a single byte. That's why you have 256 key hypotheses. Only that. So you want your guessing entropy, your key rank, to be as low as possible, because that would mean you are correct. Having your guessing entropy around 128 means you are randomly guessing, so not doing anything. So 100 would not be even breakable. People consider commonly guessing entropy up to 10, 20. 20 is already pushing, and you can do brute force on all possible options. Because if guessing entropy is 10, that means your correct key is on the 10 position, and you as the evaluator know that, and that's fine. But you as the attacker would not know that your correct key is on the 10 position, so you would need to try the first key, and you would fail. You would try the second key, you would fail, third, blah, blah, blah. 10th key, you would succeed. But if you need to do that for all 16 key bytes, you need to check all possible options. So to give you final word on side channel in machine learning, it seems it works very nice. We are able to break, at least from academic perspective, a lot. Reality a little bit less, but still the big problem is, why do we do these kinds of attacks? So why are we doing side channel attacks? To break something, or to learn how to make more secure stuff? Hopefully the answer should be to learn to do more secure stuff. And that's why this is kind of a big problem with deep learning techniques, machine learning. We are able to break, but we are not learning anything how to make stuff more secure in future. I'm telling, for instance, I showed you I break something with 2 measurements. Fine. How do I use that knowledge to make a better countermeasure? Very difficult to do. And yeah, let's say I'm done. If you have any questions, otherwise I'm kind of thinking this is already after the class should be finished. Did I overdo it a lot?
It's okay. It's okay.
Okay, I'm seeing people are slowly leaving, so I don't want to keep them way too long.
So
we are still here. Excellent. So any question, I'm here. I have time to answer if I know, of course. So any perspective on profile, on side channel attacks, you just ask. In other country, you'll have more. 58 minutes. Okay. Why noise help us with the attack again? Well, like I said, this is kind of detailed and too specific if you do not understand a lot about machine learning. But again, convolutional neural network will take part by part of the picture. Let's talk about picture that's easier to think about. And then on one part of the picture would be your ear, on the other part of the picture would be your nose, on the other part of the picture would be your, I don't know, hair or whatever, not important. And then your network would try to do something on the basis of that local information. But since you already have noise, that local information would be confusing. So for your neural network would not look and say, well, this looks like Yossi, so it's Yossi. Neural network say, okay, but yeah, I mean, it's not really that. The differences are there. So that's the perspective. If you add noise to the beginning, to the input, You basically force your neural network to concentrate only on the most important parts, because less important parts are easier covered by noise. What does it mean, more important? Bigger spike, if you add noise to a big spike on correlation, it's still big spike. If you add noise to many small spikes, they are just becoming somehow random. So in a way, adding noise, this is commonly known as data regularization technique. You force your algorithm to concentrate on the most important parts. To avoid the noise, yes, or just to make it so difficult for neural network that it will just forget about those parts and concentrate only on those parts that are really, really there, really important. Yes. No problem.
Any last questions?
Someone is typing, so let's see. If you train it with noise, it will know how to remove it, so to speak, on the test data. Yes, if you train it with noise, but then you would add the noise only to the test phase, to the attack itself. Oh, okay, ignore it. Yes, okay. More questions? Anything?